Alright, guys, and now I want to introduce the topic of the art of defense in chess. So, how do we defend against kingside attacks, against sacrifices, against all the scary stuff that everyone is scared of? Well, first of all, it's easier to attack than to defend, so try to avoid defending. But strong players have to learn how to defend because they'll have to do it in a good part of their games, no matter whether they like it or not. So we have to learn how to do it. So there are a few hints which I will go through as we look through this game played between two grandmasters. So you see, white was a grandmaster by the name of Timon, and black was a grandmaster by the name of Gligorich. And white started off with this interesting pawn sacrifice, and he says e5. So step one of defense: don't panic, don't start shouting, oh no, he's gonna get my king. No, that's not the way to defend. Don't panic by just giving up and by letting the opponent do what he wants you to do. So the opponent wants you to take with the bishop, so try to avoid the opponent's wishes, right? So what does this do? It opens up the e file while our king is in the center. So as we know, when the king is in the center, the defender wants to close the center and keep pawns on there. That's why black took with the pawn. And he says, please trade. Second principle of defense: always try to trade, especially queens. Because if we can get to any endgame up a pawn, as we are right now, it doesn't matter that the opponent has a development advantage, that he's already castled. That doesn't matter at all. It just matters who has more pawns at the end of the day. So black says, do you want to trade? And white says, of course not. And black says, how about the bishop? I want to trade the bishop. Is that okay? And white said, okay, sure, but I'll trade on my terms. No problem, we'll trade anyway. So they traded off bishops, and now it's a matter of defending this poor king. You see, he has some problems. He can't really castle this way, or at least he's gonna have a hard time doing it. All of his pieces are sleeping, and white has a lead in development due to the two knights coming out, already castled king, and the d file and the e file will be problematic when the rooks get there. So black has to hurry to make sure everything's defended. So he takes out the bishop, preparing something like queen e7 and castling. You should already have a map of how you're gonna get out of the problem. Find some idea, some resources usually, to get your king to safety. Okay, white says, no problem, I just will continue development and you'll have to deal with your problems yourself. So knight h6, right? We take out the minor pieces first, and we try to trade off the troublemakers as the defender. So a lot of the time we will have one bad piece, one gloomy piece, and one bad piece will bring gloom to your whole position, will make your position very stormy and really, really bad. So we have to trade off that troublemaker. If you have the troublemaker on g8, then do anything you can to trade him for a good piece like that beautiful knight on g5 on that nice outpost. And as we trade off pieces, the opponent has less and less attackers, so we don't have as much to worry about. The usual rule is that if we have enough defenders over their attackers, and usually the difference is 2 defenders versus 4 attackers. As long as they don't have 2 more attackers than we do have defenders, then we're okay. So let's say right now we have 1 defender, 2 defenders, and maybe 3 defenders. If they have only 1, 2, 3 attackers, let's say the rook comes here, we're fine. But if they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attackers, and we only have queen, bishop, and a knight, if that knight comes to help out, then we're in trouble. Okay, so it's the rule of 2. We need to have at least 3 versus 4 or 2 versus 3, but not 3 versus 5, then we lose. Okay? Capablanca's rule also states that the king should be protected by 2 minor pieces. So let's say the king is castled, he should be protected by a knight and a bishop. Okay? So try to have 2 minor pieces protecting your king, or 2 pieces of any kind. If you want to have a queen and a rook, sure. But the queen should usually be attacking stuff. That's why we use the minor pieces to defend. Okay? So let's see what happened next. White said, let's attack e5. And black said, no, so quickly. And we're happy to give away any extra material as a sort of gift that we give them back. So they gave us a gift and now we'll give it back as long as we get out of the attack, as long as we find a way to defend in the end. Okay, so black says, please go ahead, take me, I'll take back, and then you can take my pawn as long as I get to trade off the queen in the future. Maybe I'll bring my rook out right now. Let's bring it to e8 and everything's fine. This position is roughly equal. It's not that bad. It could be much worse. So white said, no, I want to keep as many attackers on the board as possible. And also, I don't want to just take the pawn because I'll take it later. And for now, I'll just bring in more pieces to the attack to get closer to your king. So I can have 2 more attackers than you have defenders. Let's see how that worked out for him. Black took on g5, trading off as many attackers as possible so he doesn't have to worry about them. And now black finishes development. You have to finish the piece race eventually. You can't just keep your pieces back and hope for the best. Okay? And now white says, let's open up all these files, and the second or the next principle of defense is always close the position when you can. Just close everything up. If you can close, it's better for the defender. The attacker wants to open, so the attacker should look for moves like knight takes e4, rook e1, trying to sacrifice and break through. The defender wants to close all those files, so he closes both files at once with this excellent e4 move. Okay, white says, you wanted to castle? Nope. So good attacking move, but black doesn't care because now black gets really brave and goes to the next principle of defense. If you're gonna defend for something, don't just defend for free. Otherwise, you're just suffering for no reason. If you want to suffer for something, suffer for a pawn or two, which is what he's gonna do in this game. At least that way, at the end, if you can fight off the attack and be brave enough not to get mated and stop the opponent's threats, then you're gonna have 2 pawns that you can use in the end game and take those 2 pawns all the way to the bank. Laughing while you do so. So that's black's plan right now, just to take a bunch of pawns, defend against white's attack, and saying, so what? I don't care about your attack. White tries to close off the queen. No problem. If you don't see a reason why you shouldn't take a pawn, you should take all the pawns you can, right? If you see a very good reason, like it's a poison pawn, if there was some checkmate, if you take it, okay, then maybe it's a bad idea. Right? But if there is no reason why you shouldn't and it opens up the queen scope, it's probably a good idea to take it anyways. Sometimes you should be greedy. As Korsnoy said, who was a famous grandmaster who's brilliant at defending, a good chess player is a greedy chess player. Be greedy if you don't see a reason why you shouldn't. So white says, queen to e3, I'm going to set up the attack on your king, you better be scared of me. And black just says, okay, I'll get my king off the file. So stop any problems before they arise. If you see somebody looking at your king, just get the king out of the way. The king doesn't look so safe here, but who can get him? I have a roof. The roof is open, but at least it's safer than where I was before, right? If white takes my pawn, now all the pieces are coming in. Now black is gonna be the one attacking very soon. So you see black is making his pieces better and better, leaving those pieces in the game that he wants. Remember those knights? The knight on h6? We got rid of him. Remember that bishop on d6? We got rid of him because we didn't need him. He was an ugly bishop and an ugly knight. So we traded them off, the troublemakers, and left the pieces that we need, like this bishop, which protects important pawns. Okay, white says h3, and clearly he wants to play g4 to open things up, right? And we want to keep things closed. So black just says queen a3, and he's already planning for what's about to come. A wise warrior deals with his threats one at a time. So if white wants to play g4, black is already thinking, I know you're gonna play that. So how can I stop it? Oh, later on, after all those trades, my queen can come to c5. Also, the queen has no good squares here. So we should bring it to a square where it does something. This is called all man to the king. That's one way of defending. Just bring everyone close to the king and just hide him with his own pieces, so the majesty feels protected, right? That's one way of doing it, but it's a very passive way. The second way of defending is the counter attack, right? So when the opponent starts attacking you, we start attacking them. When your pieces are good, you can counter attack. But when your pieces are sloppy or lazy, like that rook on e8, you should just go for the seatbelt method. Just strap your seatbelt on and hope for the best. And that's what black is doing right now, just hoping for the best. I want to tell you guys why a good attacker will be a good defender. A good attacker will know what the attacker is thinking. So when he's on the defending side, he can read the attacker's mind and say, you want to play g4. Okay, I will find a way to stop you, or defend against the threat anyways. So black just gets greedy and takes everything he can. And after queen takes e4, says, let me create some problems for you now. And when you start to counterattack, the opponent gets frustrated and annoyed and says, why didn't I finish this game yet? Why is he still breathing and kicking? So white has to bring the rook and pin his own rook, which is pretty sad. And the queen is now playing an important role. It's a very strong queen on c5. Plus he's up like a million pawns, right? So good for black. Any endgame is now winning if he can trade off the queens. So he deals with one threat at a time. The pawn was under attack, very important pawn, a very important square. So we defended and plan to bring the second rook into the game. Next move, white says, let me pin another rook so at least this one can go free. No problem, we just bring in all our pieces. Finally, we completed development after all this time, so the rest doesn't scare us. If your pieces are good, the opponent's attack shouldn't work. Logically, it shouldn't. There is no reason for it to work. You should be able to defend. The problem happens when the opponent's pieces are good and your pieces are bad. That's what you have to avoid. So a good defender is just a player who makes his pieces good, or at least no worse than the opponent. Okay? Now, the bishop was under attack, no problem. We just bring it back. Make sure that nothing's hanging, right? The bishop is very safe here, and he's still doing an important job covering all those important squares. The rook can't come in, right? Even if it wasn't pinned. The e6 square is under control. The bishop is doing a great job. Control the important squares as the defender, okay? White says, let me create some more threats on the h file, like knight h7. Black says, go ahead, I'll take everything. I'm a greedy guy. If I don't see a reason why I shouldn't, then I'll do it. And the reason why knight h7 is not so good right now is actually because of this check. So after this check, white has to go away, protect his rook. But now we can just sacrifice the queen and take your knight and say, I don't see any forks, I don't see any problems. Right now, I have so many pawns, and I will start pushing them very soon. My king is safe with the two rooks protecting and the bishop coming in to protect. You can't get to my picnic table with the rook at least. So, and I can always protect it with my rook if anything. I'm really safe here, and you're going to lose this as I start pushing my pawns down. But that's still better than what white played in the game, which was just the rook to d3, allowing for check. And queen takes f4. In the final position, it's actually white who's under more of an attack than black. So it's a funny turn of events that happen. So guys, just to summarize, close the position, trade off as many pieces as possible, deal with opponent's threats one threat at a time, don't panic, never hurry, and if you can, be greedy if you don't see a reason why you shouldn't. Hope that helps in your defense. And if you're a good attacker, then you'll be a good defender.